So, I was just going to speak a little bit about individual responsibility. Do you want to be happy? Seriously, do you want to be happy? If you do, you must understand that the possibility for great happiness lies within your own hands, not someone else's. Where you find yourself in life right now, you have arrived at this place and you are experiencing the things that you are experiencing because of decisions that you have made and actions that you have taken. That is a fact. We always like to blame somebody else. If we screw up, if we make bad choices, we frequently want to blame someone else. I can remember, it's not so common now, religions kind of going out of, I don't know, what's the word? Going out of fashion. You know, people used to say, the devil made me do it. Some big televangelist would be busted somewhere in a car with a prostitute or something, and his response was, the devil made me do it. It's always somebody else that made me do it. It has become actually so bad that people can commit horrific crimes and blame it on drugs or blame it on a malfunctioning mind. And unfortunately, most people tend to sympathize with those types of arguments. Sympathize is not the right word. I sympathize with someone in that situation, but I'm sorry, I don't buy into that defense. That defense makes it so I'm not responsible. I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial for some people, and I'll say it because the yoga philosophical perspective, the great wisdom that comes from the yoga system, teaches this. Number one, your mind is actually not a function of your brain. That already is quite a big deal, but there's substantial amounts of research, even from neurological doctors, neurological surgeons that spend a lot of time operating on the mind. I was just reading one just amazing article. This guy's removing the frontal lobe and part of the brain of a woman, and she starts having a conversation with him on the operating table. How's it going, etc. And he's going like, well, this is not meant to be happening, because the areas of the brain that are meant to be responsible for these functions, I'm in the process of removing it. It's largely removed. How is that process still going on? Of course, there is an intimate connection between the brain and the mind, but the mind is not an expression it is not caused by the brain. The mind in the yoga teaching is a separate type of energy and a covering of the living being. It is one of the ways in which the living being is experiencing and relating to this world. And when the mind is heavily polluted, then the experience is a heavily polluted experience. The living being is very separated. The living being is not very aware of its own existence and how it actually has the power to exercise control over the mind. If you spend your life putting garbage and evilness and wrong thinking and selfishness and everything into your brain, then when you take any kind of intoxicant, of course, whatever you've put in there is now going to come out and be magnified. It's not like the drug itself. There was just, I think recently, Radhadasi was telling me there's this crime. There was this party and these women were having, there was something going on, and one of them, I think, had a bit of a hate-in for one of the others, and she picked up a knife and went over and stabbed this woman through the eye, and of course it goes into the brain. And then the defenses are she was on drugs. Well, you know what? If you were a loving, caring, compassionate, sensitive individual, even if you took drugs, you're not going to do that. The reason you do that and the reason that comes out is because it's already there. It is a product, a result of what you're putting into your mind. And when you take drugs, you lose control of things. Your mind now begins to control you. And you may be led along by it, but you are not absolved from activity that you engage in under the influence of intoxicants. No, you're still responsible. You may be a little bit less responsible, but you are still responsible. How about that? If you want to actually become happy, you have to take charge of your life. You have to learn how to make decisions. You have to learn to put things into your mind and into your body that are going to benefit you, that are going to result in good results. You have to do some hard work. You cannot be lazy and just submit yourself to whatever's going on in your mind and around you and think that everything is going to turn out okay. We experience in our life. Now, it may come to the point where we feel powerless, where we feel weak, where we feel unable to do things. So I'm going to read you a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, and it's really interesting. There's this warrior prince by the name of Arjuna. He's on a battlefield. He's about to engage in battle and then wants to change his mind and thinks that he's doing something very wrong. And he ends up in this amazing dialogue with Lord Krishna, who instructs him about just this wonderful, wonderful wisdom. And he asks this question. He says, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Now, what I just read completely relates to this idea of a person seemingly unwillingly engaged in horrific acts. But it doesn't even need to be horrific acts. It can be even self-harm, where we're causing harm to our own mind and our own body. And what is it that, you know this word impel? It's kind of, you know, propel? It's the opposite of propel. Propel means you've been kind of pushed. Impelled, it means that you've been sucked in. You are impelled, and the words are really powerful and wonderful. By what is one impelled to sinful or harmful acts, even unwillingly? Oh my God, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do it, but I do it anyway. Even unwillingly, as if engaged by force. So Krishna explains to him, there's this word in Sanskrit that has a depth of meaning that cannot be compared to the English equivalent. But it is literally translated as lust. Lust in Sanskrit is karma, not karma, K-A-R-M-A, but K-A, long A-M-A, kama, kama. Kama it means not lust in just terms of sexual desire, how many people translate it. It means intense self-centeredness, intense desire that's motivated by selfishness and self-centeredness. When one becomes compelled by this, then we feel like we are being dragged along and we have no control over the situation. Well, it is explained that there is a way to deal with this. It says that one must begin a process of learning gradually restraint, that one must learn to curb. This English word is being used, curb. The Sanskrit means the same thing. To curb. You know what curb means? What is a curb? Yeah, it's kind of like a channel. It's for directing. We have the curbs on the road. What are the curbs for? It's so when it rains, all the water that goes down there becomes directed away. So one must learn to curb this karma. One must learn to curb it in the very beginning. So the example is given, or one I like to use is like a bunch of kids. When you're kids, one of the things really cool to play with is matches. And of course cigarettes, right? We all like to try the cigarettes when we were little kids. I don't know what's going on now. But you've got like a bunch of naughty little kids and they light a little fire in some grass somewhere in the middle of a paddock and everybody's laughing and it's hilarious. Then they stomp it out. Then somebody else wants to try, so they get the matches and they light and they let the fire get a little bit bigger and everybody's kind of like nervous and you know, and then they stomp it out. And then somebody else, the tough guy, wants to have a go. And he lights the fire and he lets it get too big. And then all of a sudden, people are trying to sort of put it out around the edges. But they realize they've lost control. And if they stay there, they will become consumed by this fire. And so all the kids just run for cover while one of the neighbors sees the smoke and calls the fire brigade. And the kids are all hiding somewhere. This is the lesson here, that a person must learn through a regulated process. Regulation, you know, like they put on a gas cylinder, you've got a regulator. The regulator controls how much gas is going to come out, how forcefully it's going to come out, and by controlling it, you can sort of damp it down so it doesn't become an explosive force. There is a process for learning how to gradually address the things in our life that are bringing unhappiness, and to engage in the things that actually do deliver genuine and spiritual happiness. And it is a process of gradual regulation, damping it down, and learning to exercise control by, in the very beginning, when the fire is really small, saying, we're not doing this today, and stamping it out. It will probably come back. It will probably appear in the future, and I must use my intelligence to do the same thing. Now, what makes it so that a person can come to this condition? You know, it's so unfortunate that we live in this time where desire has become like God. If I desire something, then it is good, it is right, and it must be done. And not only must I do it, but you need to agree with me when I'm trying to fulfill my desires. If not, you're a hater. And it's like, please, don't you know how bad it is for people to go down this path? I'll just read you another verse from the Bhagavad Gita that deals with this subject. You know, it likens desire. You know, when you feed the mind by allowing it free rein, allowing it to do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, and you follow along, you will always be unhappy. I'm sorry. You may get a big rush from something, some stimulation from something. You end up unhappy. And we are taught that the life of a yogi means actually learning how to deal with the desires of the mind. That I don't have to follow all of them. I can actually learn to gradually, bit by bit, to tolerate them. And the example is given here like an ocean. You know, if you've ever seen massive rivers, and we're talking about the big ones, you know, the Ganges, you know, the Amazon, the big rivers that flow into the sea, where you have sometimes 80, 100 kilometers, 120 kilometers across the mouth, and fresh water going out 4 or 5 kilometers into the ocean. We're talking about massive flows of water. And yet the ocean remains steady. Even though there is this forceful and constant flow of so many rivers into the ocean remains still and constant. And it is advised that if we can learn to tolerate desires, particularly desires that are not helpful to us, it is an important part of actually achieving happiness, and not the other way around. So there's a beautiful verse. It says, a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still, such a person alone can achieve peace, and not the person who tries to satisfy such desires. oh my God, this is like, this is revolutionary. This is completely opposite to the message of a materialistic world that we live in, where we are told, just give in to all your desires, go for it. Your desires are sacred, even if they become really weird and really distorted. By giving into them, by practically worshiping them, holding them up to be something profoundly wonderful, it will lead to your happiness. I'm sorry, no it doesn't. If you are going to go down that path, as we say repeatedly, it never ends well. What we must learn to do is cultivate desire that is for activity that is actually going to benefit us, that is actually going to deliver happiness. Even if we are in a state where we feel profoundly weak and unable to change, unable to do anything, hey, it's okay. We're all in the same boat. But if we engage in a proper spiritual process that is founded on this meditation upon spiritual sound, it will bring transformation to us. We will be able to find the strength, bit by bit, baby steps, little bit by little bit. We will find the strength, we will find the capacity to make it so that change will come into our life. And it won't be because we're big and strong and powerful. No, it is because we are taking shelter in that which is able to change us. That's it, folks. How about that? This is a lot to consider in a very short period of time here. We've covered an amazing subject, and the things that I have talked about, we can actually take one tiny part of that and expand on it. There is so much profound and wonderful wisdom there. But if you take what I am saying seriously, it is not my words, it's not an idea I came up with. This is something that I have received from great spiritual teachers who have passed this knowledge since time immemorial. And it is true, and it works, but one must be committed to at least try. So let us engage in that process, the one that brings about this transformation. Sound okay?